My name is Rachel Hagemeyer, President and CEO of the Canton Symphony Orchestra. Welcome to our podcast, Orchestrating Change. I am so happy to be joined today by the fabulous Mélisse Brunet, who is with us in Canton this week to conduct Brahms Requiem. Just so many exciting things happening, and I'm so glad you're here. And I won't talk too long. If you want to do a little introduction about who you are, and then we'll jump right in.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do Brahms Requiem. Actually, it's going to be my first. So that's even more exciting that for me, it's coming back to Northern Ohio because that's where I landed first in the US.
Yeah.
So my name is Mélisse Brunet. And as you can hear, I was born in Paris, France. I came to the United States on January 8, 2010, and I landed in Cleveland, Ohio. Fell in love immediately with the country, and I was supposed to stay 4 months for an exchange program and loved the country and the people so much that I applied for a post-master's degree, was accepted, stays in Cleveland longer, then went to Michigan to do a doctorate at the University of Michigan, then got my first job in Boone, North Carolina as director of orchestras, then went to Iowa, where I was director of the orchestras at the University of Iowa, and moved to Philadelphia. I stopped teaching, so now I'm only a freelance conductor and music director of 2 orchestras. So there is the Northeastern Pennsylvania Philharmonic, and there is the Lexington Philharmonic in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I started with the cello, even though I wanted to play drums. And very soon, when I was about 14 years old, I wanted to become an orchestral conductor.
Yeah. I've heard you talk, and I know you give talks a lot. And so it's really, it's very special when you can just feel someone's excitement exude from them. And that's something I think you do really well, is that you share your excitement. And one thing that I want to get into later is that you don't hide who you are, and you're very confident. And I think for a lot of women, especially a lot of young women, that is something that is shied away from, because people and the perception of society can make that feel too much or bossy or whatever. And I think that it's always fun to hear you speak and be confident of I am good and I am talented, and I think it's really wonderful. So I thank you for being here and for sharing everything. Just to get us started, I do like to do just fun rapid fire. Don't think too hard.
Can I jump
questions?
in?
Yeah.
On what you mentioned, because I used to be very shy.
I also used to be very shy.
Isn't it weird, right? A teenager, I would never speak but to my very good friends. Right. Shy to the point that when the phone, those old phones would ring at home, I was running away. Yeah. When I needed to give a phone call, it would take me 1 week preparation to motivate myself before I could give the phone call. Yeah. So for me, it's really important now that I've discovered finally who I am.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of therapy.
Yes.
That's the secret here.
Oh, very good.
To help women and girls as well, so they don't lose as many years as I felt I've lost, even though it's never lost, it's a process. But that's why I love teaching so much and having an impact on younger generations.
That I remember. I played piano when I was very little, and my first piano recital, I refused to go on stage. I wouldn't do it. And except if my dad came up with me and sat on the piano bench next to me to block the audience so that the audience couldn't see me and I could not see them. And then he also promised me ice cream afterwards. And that was the only way I would get up to I wouldn't do it. I was so shy. I wasn't shy all the way into my teenage years, but I literally wouldn't talk to people outside of my family until I was, in elementary school. We moved, and something in my brain went, you have to talk to people or else no one's going to talk to you because you're now in a brand new place. And something happened there that finally got me to talk to people. But it's so interesting what keeps it all inside. And that's so
and at the same time, we know that we are a people person. Probably you knew that when you were that age, but there was that cut, and that's really funny.
Yeah, I literally wouldn't.
And that your dad was game. I love it.
Yeah, my dad was like, okay, here we go.
I love that.
My dad's one of those people that he can walk into a room and be best friends with everyone there.
Love
and
it.
It's just okay, there's dad. People would become my friend, but then they meet my dad and they're like, oh, now I'm Paul's friend. I'm like, okay, here we are. That's fine. I get it. I understand. Okay. Well, we'll do a couple of, I want to talk more about that though. That's really interesting, but very quickly. Okay. Are you a morning or night person?
Well, I'm really a morning person, which is hard with a job.
I was going to say this.
That's hard because you, after rehearsal, when they end up at 10 or concert, it takes like 2, 3, 4 hours to come down.
Yeah.
So you go to bed very late and then in the morning, but I'm really at heart, I'm a morning person. I love, waking with the birds, waking up with the birds, go enjoy nature and quiet. So that's more who I am, but I adapt to the job.
For conductors or musicians, I always ask, if you weren't a conductor, what do you think you would be doing right now?
Wow. Okay. So I probably would have won, to my dream, would have won Olympic medal in 400 meters.
Oh,
track and field.
I do know you like to run.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And that 400 meters race was like
Sweet
one
spot.
of my favorites. I used to do track and field.
Oh, cool.
And probably by now, geopolitics, I would say.
Ooh.
I'm really a lot into that. So something like that. I love restoration and antiques.
I love that too. Wow.
Yeah. History, geopolitics, probably a job in there. I'm always thinking, how can I, bring geopolitics more to all of us citizens, because there is so much to discover, and that's really not explained in the media or brought up to us easily.
Yeah, Americans are very good at isolating ourselves too.
Yeah.
Because America always feels like we're the center of the world and we're everything, which is, it's when a country this big, it's hard to realize that.
Yeah, and I think any
so
country
much going
that
on.
big like China or Russia think a bit the same, you know.
It's such a massive.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. What's your favorite piece of music you've ever conducted? I know this is a hard one for conductors.
I cannot give you one. Like, it's everything, really. I would feel terrible like having a favorite child. I can't do that. I don't have kids, but obviously I love them all. So I really don't have a favorite one.
Yeah, I know that your answer was going to be that based on, because at your talk, you're like, I can't choose. Tell me to choose my favorite piece of music. What do you mean?
Yeah,
I can't choose
what
my
do you
favorite
mean?
piece of music. I also
Everything.
I struggle really hard to choose my favorite piece of music as well. Is there a place in the world that feels like your favorite place? If you needed to go somewhere, like, this is the place I would be.
That's interesting because that's a topic that comes a bit in the movie, in Maestra. And I'm one of the persons who changed country. And when I changed country, I did not have any family or people I knew in the United States. So I had to restart everything. Yeah. And that's a move. Like, I don't think people who have never changed a country to live in another country can understand that it's very difficult. And I was not forced to do it, right? France was not in a war.
Right.
I didn't need to escape for my safety. So at least there was not that on top of everything, but it was already so hard to have to restart everything. And I've learned really to bring my favorite place with me. So wherever I am, I'm happy. And now I've got a family. So I want to be with my family everywhere. And we try to travel together. But we are very rarely home. We love to be home. So home is a good spot for us. But we make any place where we travel to, we make it our place because we are together.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I have not ever moved countries, but I live very far away from where I grew. I grew up in Oklahoma, and so I live very far away. And a lot of people who have never left where they grew up, it's even a different experience. True. And it's very, I I never discount people. There's not like a quality of life. There's not a value. You're not a better person for having moved away from your hometown. I think that's a fallacy of like your hometown's the worst place ever. We all assume that where we grew up is terrible, but there is a very different perspective you get when you are just in a different space. But I find so many similarities with Canton to where I grew up.
Oh, really?
So many similarities. Football is a big one.
Okay.
But people are people. And I think that there are lots of similarities, but the difference is when I go back home, I'm like, wow, America's so big. I'm like, wow, I do forget. There's a big difference between just these, even two states.
Yeah, right. And I'm very lucky that I lived in so many different states for a long time.
Yes.
I was in Ohio, Michigan, North Carolina, Iowa, and now Pennsylvania. And I work in Kentucky. So it's basically 6 states that I've experienced for a very long time. And I'm thinking, even please, any American politician, go live in different states to understand the people.
Right.
Because as you said, there are so many similarities, but there are so many differences in the culture, even in the way of speaking. I remember first time I went to Memphis, Tennessee, I was very new to the States, and I took a Greyhound because I was broke from Cleveland, and it was the days where it was $1, to travel very far. So after 17 hours of bus, I arrived in Memphis, and people started speaking, and I was, which country am I?
It's different now. Yes. Things have changed.
I could not understand the temperature, the weather, and everything.
Everything is so different. It's Oklahoma has has a bit of an accent. has a bit of an accent, but it's not as something as like the Deep South. And so when I went to school, I don't have like a strong Southern or country accent. However, I did have a little bit of one just because I grew up around people, and it would come out every once in a while. And every time my accent would come out a little bit, some person from Northeast Ohio when I was at school would be like, there it is. And I'd be like, I've been caught. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's America has so much to discover, and I wish it was easier for Americans to travel. Within our own country, because like you said, mass transit is not really a thing here. And if we had a train system that actually would go, it's such a large country though, I just think there's so many opportunities that Americans miss out on by not just understanding other states and other people and where they grew up. And I think it's a really big issue for our own country that we don't even know ourselves, really. Yeah,
and I also see it as a potential huge economic growth, because America, is about economy. That's really important. But developing a high-speed train system is a huge growth opportunity. We understand that it's going to come competing to oil industries and other industries. But I think developing one doesn't mean closing the other one. And most big countries like China has a fantastic high-speed train system, and it helps everybody, even families, to meet, because you have so many grandkids who go to college to a very far away state, and then coming back home is complicated. Then you also, airport situation is more and more complicated. Traveling with planes is even dangerous.
Oh my gosh.
It's been like,
this has been rough.
I'm trying to avoid that. It's scary.
I'm flying home next week for the Easter holiday, because my dad can't travel right now because he tore his hamstring. Oof. Oh, not a good one to heal from. But so I'm traveling and I'm flying, and I try to drive to Oklahoma. Really, it takes 16 hours, but because the flights are so expensive, I mean, it's like $600 just to get to Oklahoma.
That's crazy.
I'm like,
I know. It's like, it does not make sense.
Doesn't make sense. Well, and yet, it's such an interesting country we live in. I love this rabbit hole that we've gone down. Because I think it's so kind of transitions into so you were born in Paris and now live here and are pursuing music, and that's a hard field in and of itself. And then adding that you're a woman conductor, and a lot of people were like, that can't happen. And it still is such a small percentage of conductors that are women, let alone conductors of major orchestras that are women. And it is, I can't imagine that it's a friendly space sometimes to be in. And I don't know what you're, what the the musician's relationship with you are. And, there's probably been orchestras where it's been very warm and it's been very wonderful. There's probably been orchestras where you sensed a little bit of tension. And I'm curious, one, if you could talk a little bit about what made you even want to be a conductor when there's not a lot of representation, when you it's like, it's hard to want to be something when you can't see yourself there. And so I'm curious what pushed you to want to do that, even when there really wasn't the representation.
Yeah.
And then, how you kind of soldiered on to get where you wanted to go.
Yeah, well, so first of all, about the fact that there are not a lot of women being music director or even guest conducting major American orchestras. About 2-3 years ago, I was in a plane from Chicago to Scranton International. And the lady next to me, we went through like a storm or something, and I was, please make that lady is not panicking. She looked like in her 60s, and generally people panic. And I'm studying my scores, and I'm perfectly fine. And she's so fine, so chill and things. And then we discuss at the end, and she's retired NASA astronaut.
Wow. She's just a retired astronaut? Wow,
yes,
amazing.
Just that.
Of course she's calm.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've been to space. It's fine.
That's so funny. That's the first time someone was so chill next to me, which I love because Nicole Stott is her name, and actually she was interested because she saw me with my scores, and she had just finished a project with Amanda Falkenberg, who wrote The Moons, and Maureen Alsop conducted that piece. And on that recording, she's talking about her, the connections to space and things. So, but that to say that then I was suddenly very interested to know more about women in NASA, because it's kind of higher job. Can you get that? It's also very demanding. Yeah. And actually, it's easier to become a NASA astronaut than it is to become a woman conductor of a major orchestra or guest conductor in America.
Wow.
The percentage is way higher. At NASA, I think it's 30 to 35%. And major orchestras is like 3-5, you know.
It's so low.
It's so low. So that tells us something here, that it's not about quality.
Yeah.
The fact that, there are no more women conductors is just because doors are not opening. Because if women can be NASA astronauts, let me tell you, we can be conductors of orchestras, That being said, so, probably it's my naivety that protected me from realizing I didn't have representation and I could not do it.
Naivety can be a tool.
That can be a tool.
It can definitely be a tool at the beginning of things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And also then, to be an artist, naivety is really helpful to go back to the inner child, to the creativity of a child and the naivety that a child has to the world and the curiosity and, but I was playing in an orchestra when I was 14 years old as a cellist, and my sister was in the violin. It was our school orchestra. Really nothing. My parents are not musicians. I loved jazz at that point, did not really like classical, but we're playing there and we were bored to death. All of us, like teenagers. And then I realized that guy Mozart, didn't know anything about him. There was just no way that one morning he woke up and said, my goal in life is to write the most boring music. It's not happening. So then I realized he wanted to share great things, right? That's what we all want, that I was sure of that. So I have two choices. Either I learn my cello part very well and understand what he wants to share with us, but if my friends, my sister don't do the same, I'm going to be very frustrated. Or I can become the conductor, because the conductor right now cannot share with me all of us all the excitement of the music. Right. But if I have the entire score, I have all the lines, then I'm going to be understanding what Mozart wanted to share with us. Probably very something that really struck me at that point was the tempi. The slow movements back then in the 80s were very slow after the Karajan and things fashion of taking all second movements very slow. much slower than what the composer had intended. That's why I was so bored too. So if I study that and then I can pass it through the musicians, the musicians will have more joy, and then we share more joy with the audience. Yeah. So from that point, I knew there were no women, but I did not even think it would be a problem, because my parents had raised us in a way like, as long as you work hard, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was I know how to work hard. I'm going to work hard, and then I'm gonna make it. Yeah. But hey, no. That's when reality hit several, all the time, and made it a lot more complex.
Yeah.
Than what it could have been.
Yeah, and it's so. It's great to have parents when you grow up that are so supportive of you, and they give you energy, and they want you to try things and be curious and learn, and all of that is wonderful until you leave that situation and realize that's sometimes incredibly abnormal, and not a lot of people actually get that. And when you come up against something in life, it's the choice of pushing through that. And did our parents instill in us this ability to soldier through difficult things? One thing I'm really grateful for is that my parents did not shield me from hard things, even though I grew up in a very privileged life. They wanted to make sure I was very educated so that I wouldn't go into the world just completely blundering through things. Yeah. One thing that is maybe annoys me the most in life is when you meet someone who grew up very privileged and had parents who, instead of asking them to be curious and challenging them, just would say, you're perfect, you can do whatever you want. And then they get into a world and they just think it's owed to them. And especially when it's a man, sometimes they just get it. And when they get it, that's when I get the most annoyed. I'm like, why? Why did they get that thing when objectively I don't see a reason why? And I'm curious because I know that happens a lot in the music world, especially probably in the conducting world. And I'm curious how you mentally handle that kind of like cognitive dissonance for me about just, it doesn't make sense to me. And I'm curious how you think about that and handle that in this industry.
Yeah, that's a very good point you raise, because I grew up also hating injustice, and that comes to injustice really. Yeah. And I always, fairness for me is key. And then you realize that in the world it's not there, but in that field in specific, it's absolutely not there for conductors, and for women conductors, I would say even more my generation, because thank goodness it's starting to change. But I think I still intellectually do not comprehend what's happening, but now I'm at peace that actually there is nothing to comprehend. And I'm also at peace with the fact that I know who I am, I know what I'm bringing, and sometimes you're born too early. It's like a lot of women who were composers or wanted to be conductors in the past centuries, or just did not want to get married and be housewives. Right. They were born too early, right? Somewhat. Yeah. And yet they lived, and so how do you make the best of your life and find joy rather than feeling frustration? So I've felt anger, I felt frustration, despair, all of those things, for decades, I would say. And I've found peace, really. I found peace, I found joy. It's and now it's almost it makes me laugh when I see incredible things, like someone who doesn't at all have the level of being at conducting that orchestra and who is conducting that orchestra. I used to feel anger and frustration, and now it just makes me laugh. And I'm like, okay, go for it, Right. It's like, it's fine, I've got my life. Yeah. There is a space for everybody. I think it's making a disservice to our industry and to the people, because I think audiences are a lot smarter than what our industry leaders think they are. People, they can recognize when it's fake. They can recognize when it's not that good. They can see the moods of musicians on stage, and they feel the magic too, So I think we are making a disservice, and that's also probably why audiences are shrinking, because the business is done right now in a way that is not the most organic and the most natural.
Right. Yeah, that's such a amazing point. I think that there are a lot of things in our industry right now that are very difficult to think about as an administrator of what's the right move here. How do we think about financials? How do we like all the laundry list of things that we're thinking about? And I think what a lot of orchestras have done recently is forgotten about the audience and realizing that when the audience feels connected to the orchestra, that's when the piece of music probably matters the least, right? And how do you create that connection between the audience and the orchestra? And that is a lot of times the lightning rod of a conductor. And a conductor can get the musicians to buy into wanting to connect with the audience, because if the musicians don't want to connect with the audience, they're on a stage or like we're all kind of far away from each other. How do we actually create this connection? And a lot of times it's the lightning rod of the conductor. And I think that it's really important. Some of the best people that we've worked with here at the Canton Symphony, the best musicians, the best artists, have been the nicest people, the kindest people, the ones who exude joy. And you just feel it completely differently when the person you're working with is just a nice, joyful person. Yeah. When they aren't, trying to be something they're not. And I think that talent follows that. Some of the most talented people are the kindest people and the most joyful people. Like Garrick Olson is one of the most talented pianists, and he's just such a joy. I can't say enough nice things about him. He was such a beautiful human to be around. And watching him play, I was like, I'm just crying for watching this man play the piano. It's like he's breathing up there. What's happening? And the audience was like, oh my God. Like, it was just fabulous to be a part of something like that. A soloist can do that with an audience, and a conductor, I think, really can. And I'm curious how you, when you're working with an orchestra, get that connection going with the audience, because I definitely know it has. I've talked with the orchestras that you work with, and I know Chasen, the executive director for your orchestra in Pennsylvania, and he's just, oh, Mélisse, oh my gosh, we all but it has impacted the orchestra, and the orchestra and the audience look very different with you there. And so I'm curious, I know maybe toot your own horn here, but like, what do you think you've done to really do this?
I think the most important is to not try to do anything, actually, is to learn to be yourself. So I think since I'm at peace with who I am, and I've done so much therapy, one more time, I cannot speak highly enough about mental health. Yes. So important. And that's there is no magic. We all have baggage, things we carry. Yeah. And working on it's just going to help you to feel better. And then once you are authentic, once you found who you are, that's when everybody is going to want to be around you and working with you, because you are just yourself. So for me, it's authenticity. At one point in my career, when I was young, in my 20s, I was so ambitious, and and I knew my level. You're going through the Paris Conservatoire; it's very elitist school of music, and doing a lot of those studies. So I was like kind of in the mentality of, I deserve that. Let me do this, and I've got that version. And but it was so egocentric, everything. Because I was not well yet, and I had so many things to work on, that since I've worked on them, and also I would say all the hurdles I've faced have helped me to become a better human. All the hardships, as you mentioned of a man who would have grown up in a family where everything was given to them, and then would get the job without even thinking about it. They do not know that actually they are highly privileged. You know those differences once you have had to experience all the hurdles.
Right.
That's the difference.
That's when naivete is not helpful.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm never trying. I think I live really in true joy. Everything brings me joy. Everything. I'm so curious, and learning a new score is just amazing. Last night I had to learn a new score very quickly, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And that's fun. It's just, and then how can we share that with the musicians? I want kindness also. And that's something I discovered in the US.
Yeah.
I want to share, I want to be kind because I want to be treated with kindness. I've been treated with so little kindness in my life. And I see it makes a difference when you treat other people with kindness. So I want to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Right.
And I'm really trying to apply that all the time in my life. And I think people can sense that, and they feel safe probably. They feel safe to be around and also to express themselves and to be themselves. Maybe, I don't know, you need to talk to them.
No, this is such a weird thing that we do. It's one of the most human things of making music. I mean, humans have been doing this forever, of making music, and now we've organized ourselves on a stage with very specific instruments in very specific places doing very specific things. And I think it's so interesting how time and time again, composers and musicians have created just like human experiences, and we lose that a lot because we get caught up in the reality of life, and things like global crises and stress and a pandemic, and people just think about their lives very differently. And what can an orchestra offer them? Why is an orchestra relevant? Why is what we do important in a time where people don't have access to food? Why is what we do, why should we even be here? If why should people donate to an orchestra when there's so many other things that really need funds as well? And I think that it goes back to what you were saying about like making space and mental health and actually allowing human things to happen, which I think was what the orchestra does and what music does. And I wish our audiences could feel that in a really real way. I have no idea. I'm not in the audience very often, much to my chagrin. I'm usually backstage running around, doing something. But I really want, here at the Canton Symphony, I really want for us to focus on that as we move forward, and focus on our musicians and making sure that they are feeling that too. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but musicians can get really bogged down in the fact they can get I see it in their faces I'm like, I really want them to be finding the joy here. And I don't know if they are. And I really want to, like, how can we take better care of our musicians? That's something I think about all the time. Yeah,
that's a very important question because one of the job I hold, I arrived after maybe a couple or 3 years of no music directorship. But when I arrived, I worked with the musicians. I could tell there was a lot of PTSD in their behavior, a lot of fear. And totally lack of joy in doing their job. And then I discovered it was the same in the community towards the orchestra. And the previous music director had instilled that, I created that climate. So my first role I saw as a music director was to really help for everybody to feel safe on stage, safety for them to feel good. And I really can tell that after 4 years, that's the case. Musicians have felt joy. They even come to concerts with accessories because they know that I'm a lot into also changing the way we appear on stage.
Dinosaur. I've seen you in a blow-up dinosaur outfit.
T-Rex. And they will also dance while we are doing pops concerts, which before they were like...
Right.
Like no joy at all, and they embrace all repertoire now that we are doing with that joy, and that makes a huge difference. And same thing for the audience. All the time to bring that safety first, but there is a huge work now when you say why why do we need orchestras now that we have, we had COVID, like price of gas is like, everything is going south, right? Well, actually, when you think about it, when during prehistory, they had food problems, like they had big survival problems, right?
Really big, huge.
A lot bigger than ours. Yet they were creating art. Yet they were doing music. I'm sure every day they were doing painting every day because that's a way to express oneself safely. And I'd say like even more than in peaceful times, art is needed when everything feels it's going south or we are losing control, which is something that we don't like, that our routine is broken, right? Actually, what we do is even more essential. So I think like people who think, I'm going to give my money rather to this organization that fits people or to my church that helps. I'm saying it's great. It's fantastic. Keep doing that. Make sure also to give to arts organization because we are healers. Music, I mean, there is a music therapy field, but it's growing. That's pretty big because music heals. And it's actually been proven. There has been some research done by American universities showing that classical music also helps with practicing sports. So when like basketballers were listening to classical music during their training, their performance went up. Yes.
Fun.
So that's very interesting that it comes to classical music to help with that because there is something about the focus, the length of pieces that is also not short. That helps you find a flow and develop things on a longer stride and on a longer form, right? Because if you listen to a song 3 minutes, boom, you change.
Right.
And,
interesting.
And also the pace changes a lot generally in a 20 minutes long movement. So you go through, it's like watching a movie, when you experience everything inside, like from I'm a superhero to, oh my God, they are being tortured. I hate it, but it's the same through classical music because of the length that is a lot longer.
Wow. That's all of that is perfect and wonderful. I think we'll take a small pause here and we will come back next week and chat about a little bit more specifically the Maestra documentary.
Yay.
Orchestrating Change is a production of the Canton Symphony Orchestra. Our theme music was composed by Eric Gould and performed by Derek Snyder and Tim Adams. Our video and audio editor is Sarah Daler. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.